Kirby's Return to Dreamland, or Kirby's Adventure Wii, if you're European like me, is one of my favorite childhood games. It was a huge milestone in Kirby's history, setting the standard for the depth of copy abilities in later entries, not to mention delivering some fantastic music and visuals. Even though I've beaten this game countless times throughout the years, lately I've been wondering, is it possible to beat Kirby's Return to Dreamland without taking damage, without killing a single enemy, and without using copy abilities? Today, we're here to find out the answer. So, let's set some ground rules, shall we? First off, let's talk about what counts as killing an enemy. Anytime an enemy dies from directly interacting with Kirby, such as getting hit by an attack or being inhaled, that counts as a kill. So, we are not allowed to do that. However, if an enemy dies indirectly, for example by being pushed off a platform into the void, that does not count because the cause of death is gravity, not Kirby. We don't kill here, we just strongly encourage them to walk off the stage. What we are allowed to do though is use the block. Blocking pushes enemies away on contact and does deal damage, although most of the time it is not lethal. Most of the time. Gauging whether an enemy survives the block or not is also part of the challenge. Some stages of this game can be partially skipped by hovering over them. While this is not a strict rule, I will do my best not to abuse this oversight. Finally, it is important to point out that the goal here is to prove the game can be beaten without taking damage and without killing anyone. But there is no point in proving it if we cannot demonstrate it. That means, anytime we take a hit or accidentally claim a life, we are restarting the stage from the very beginning. Before starting this challenge, I'll recap the story for those who haven't played through this game. Big ship falls from the sky, Kirby and friends rush in to check for survivors. Turns out the pilot is alive, but his ship is wrecked and missing several parts. Our heroes offer to retrieve them, and just like that begins Kirby's adventure. With that out of the way, let's begin. Starting with World 1, Cookie Country. Stage 1 proves to be simple. We breeze through the tutorial, slip past the cave enemies, and immediately reach the final section of the level. Guess this really was a cakewalk, huh? Alright, maybe it wasn't that easy. See these pink fellas? These guys are called Bronto birds? Well, anyway, these pink menaces will turn out to be the biggest threat this world has to offer, since they'll lock onto us and never, and I mean never, stop chasing. So, after a dribbling performance worthy of Prime Messi himself, we weave our way to the end of this level, and we're off to Stage 2. Stage 2 goes fairly smoothly, except for a few hiccups. We dodge spiders dangling from the ceiling, slide under the bouncies, and finally take our sweet time to lure this... what was it called again? Oh yeah, Bronto bird. We take our sweet time to lure this Bronto bird away, so we can proceed to the last section of the level, where we make short work of this mini-boss, and we're off to Stage 3. Stage 3 proves to be a light challenge. After getting caught a few times by the bouncies, we make our way down the cave with some questionable engineering, dodge more bouncies, and finish it off with a thrilling race against the key D. Then, it's onward to Stage 4. Stage 4 starts as a breeze. We dodge falling rocks. Weave through the Brontos. Okay, this time we dodge the rocks, weave through the Brontos. Damn. We eventually make it past those pests, avoid the falling stalagmites, and spend about a minute trying to figure out when to jump to avoid the Waddle Dees. Finally, we float through the last section of the stage. Normally, this is a super ability section, but to do it the intended way, I'd have to absorb and thus kill the super enemy, which I'm not allowed to do, meaning these sections end up as a true test of nimbleness, forcing us to dodge all the giant obstacles we'd normally clear with ease. We finally get to stage 5, which is also the boss of this area, Wispy Woods. I'd be lying if I said this was a tough battle, but it sure drags on. Since we can't use copy abilities, the only way to deal damage is to spit back what Wispy throws at us. At first, he drops enemies from above, which we can't use for damage. That forces us to wait for his second attack, when he drops apples. Those, we can spit back for some decent hits. So after masterfully dodging everything Wispy throws and spitting enough apples to fill Kirby's endless stomach, we finally vanquish this mighty foe and claim our hard-fought prize, the ship's ores. We return them to our friend Magolor, and just like that, we're off to World 2, Raisin Ruins. For this challenge, many levels can be summed as: just be good at the game and don't get hit while also not hitting anyone. So, from this point on, instead of walking through each and every moment of this game, since that wouldn't make for a great video, I'll focus on breaking down what the major roadblocks were. World 1 was not much of a challenge, and I really thought World 2 would not be either. It isn't. Except for one level. Enter Stage 3. On the first few tries, I struggled to get past the bouncies. Yes, I could just fly over them, but as I said at the beginning, to keep things challenging, I avoid flying over obstacles as much as I physically can. Oh, and I also eat a giant cannonball to the face. After avoiding a second one and finally getting past the bouncies, we climb the long cannon-filled stairway. We keep dodging every obstacle until King Doo stands in our way. Sadly for him, he is no challenge, and we move on to the next section. This section proves to be brutal. To progress through the level, the game wants us to use these cannons. Upon entering the one with the arrow on it, we'll be able to choose which direction to shoot Kirby by pressing the jump button when facing said direction. These ones are a little different though. I like to call them autocannons, and as the name implies, if Kirby enters one of these, he is automatically fired in the direction the cannon is facing. If we were to follow the path the game wants us to take, it would look something like this. Luckily, when taking the second cannon, we can fire Kirby into the wall, which gives us control again and lets us reach the next safe cannon. We're now back inside a directional cannon. No enemies are visible, so we should be safe to shoot. Oh boy. After determining that the cannon was indeed not safe to use, we have to devise a plan to float our way up without using the cannon. Realistically, the only choice we have is to shoot Kirby towards either of the cannons. But wouldn't that just mean that Kirby will take damage, making it impossible to continue? Well, actually no. As you can see, after hitting a wall after being shot, Kirby gets exactly 75 frames of invincibility. Since the game is running at 50 FPS, that gives us a leeway of precisely 1.5 seconds to drift away from the cannon after impact. More than enough to make it to this vertical shaft. Now, all we have to do is dodge these flying fish. Dodge the first, dodge the second, dodge the third, and... What the hell am I looking at? Yup, you saw it correctly. To clear this level, we have to get through these two, somehow. After failing over and over again, I choose to keep a level head and stop to analyze how these fish move. As you can see, these two do move in a very different fashion compared to their lone counterparts. The solo fish travel at a set speed, meaning that their fin animation is purely cosmetic and doesn't really affect their movement in any way. But these two move differently. They actually thrust with their fins, and each thrust always makes them move a set distance. But then, wouldn't they always end up in the same position? Well, yes, that would be the case if their thrust always started in the same position, but it doesn't. And out of every possible starting position, there is a single one we have to look out for. When their backs are close to each other as possible, and both thrust towards the wall, a tiny gap opens. That is our window. We barely squeeze through the nearly non-existent gap and finally clear this accursed stage. As if the last level was nothing but a fever dream, we clear stage 4 without a single noteworthy challenge. Therapeutic stage. Thanks, game. Skipping to stage 5, it is time to face the boss of World 2, the mighty Mr. Duder. The fight plays out similarly to the first boss. Dodge attacks, spit anything that is not a living being back at him, and take care not to hurt the little critters he throws. The difference is that this guy goes down much faster, since many of his attacks generate stars that we can spit back for damage. We make quick work of Mr. Duder, and this time we get the ship's right wing. On to World 3, Onion Ocean. As the name implies, this world features multiple underwater stages, and to no one's surprise, they turn out to be the hardest ones on the first planet. Stage 1 is different though. It is the only stage in World 3 that takes place above ground, which makes for an easy, unremarkable stage clear. Stage 2 is where the difficulty cranks up. As soon as we dive in, we can immediately tell who the biggest threat in this world will be. Meet the Blipper. Not only these guys are as bloodthirsty as the Bronto birds, but they usually come in packs, which makes them even harder to avoid. Especially considering that Kirby's movement options are way more limited inside the water and can't use his block. It's kinda like playing tag, but with bricks tied to your feet. It's not long before we're met with our first squad of blippers, ready to hunt us down. What's even worse is that, as you can see, the path is also seemingly blocked by these two, glunks. Clearing this section is not easy, and after many attempts, I finally come up with a winning strategy. First, it is crucial to break the blocks below the Krabby, otherwise it will smack us while we're busy kiting the blippers away. Next, as mentioned earlier, we need to lure the two Kirby hungry fish as far as possible, but not too far. If we do, they despawn and respawn in their original spot, making it even harder to maneuver around them. Finally, we have to slowly float down to align perfectly with the tiny gap between the two glunks. This is particularly hard because the directional inputs move Kirby too much to fine-tune his position. On top of that, whether the glunks decide to fire as we align with the gap is basically a coin flip. Not to mention, we're also bound by the time limit set by the two blippers chasing us down. If we mess up, we have to loop back around and try again. Eventually, we get past the glunks and move on. We run into Kibble Blade, beat him with no trouble, and head back into another underwater section. After dodging turtles and bees, we reach the end of the section, where a Poppy Bro is standing directly in front of the door. If this were a smaller enemy, we could simply drop from above while holding up, since that lets us enter the door faster than Kirby collides with the enemy's hitbox. But since Poppy's hitbox is too big, we need another plan. The trick is to push him away with our block. Because he is stationary, we cannot just wait for him to walk into it. Instead, we dash to gain momentum, then slide into him while blocking. That knocks him back just far enough for us to slip through the door. For the last spurt, we carefully make our way through countless blippers and barbers and get to the end of the level. Stage 3 is even harder, mainly because it has the single most challenging obstacle to overcome in the entire game. We encounter it fairly early into the level. We work our way up this vertical shaft and reach a platform with two switches. Depending on which switch we press, different blocks disappear, sending Kirby down different paths. In this case, it doesn't really matter which button we press, as we'll soon be faced with this guy. To be truthful, when I saw this blipper, I thought for sure there was gonna be no way to get past it. No matter how you look at it, there just isn't enough space to fit. Or is there? Turns out there is a single frame of leeway for us to press our movement input and make it to the other side. Being even one frame off will result in either Kirby just immediately bumping into the blipper or getting hit in the back on its way down after touching the ceiling. Needless to say, I had to spam save states for this one, as redoing the entire level every single time would have probably taken me weeks of tries. And for good reason, because it turns out there's another section like this that has 2 more of these blippers to get past. Although one of them is optional if you use the switch in the middle. However, it does not end here, because even though segments intended for super abilities are usually easy, this one is anything but. First, we have to get past a row of glunks, which we can handle with precise blocking. Then, we have to get past the gigabuff version of what we just saw, featuring 2 Krabbies and 3 glunks. Really, getting through these guys is a matter of patience and precision. We wait out the glunks, then jump over the Krabbies at the right time. It is crucial not to start the jump right next to a Krabby, or it might just catch us immediately out of the air. Right after that, we time our float to slip into this tiny gap before the moving pillars return. Hesitate for even a second and it's game over. Having gotten past the pillars, we're now in the clear and reach the end of this stage without any issues. Stage 4 took an ungodly amount of tries, 17 to be exact. There's no single complicated gimmick here. The level is just packed with quite evil enemy placement. From the very start, we have to make our way down to a switch and press it while being chased down by 2 blippers. This alone was not easy at all. After that, we must hit the switch by shooting it, because if we take our time to step on it, we immediately get cornered by the blippers. The moment we hit it, we have to swim back, making this tunnel rise from below. If we fail to get on top of it, we die instantly. It's crucial to keep going right when on it. While being pushed upwards, Kirby is unable to perform any vertical movement and is essentially stuck to the ground. When the tunnel's ascent halts, we dribble past the blipper and we're immediately met with 3 squishies, which, with some patience, we do get through. The next section is also filled with blippers, squishies, and all types of homing enemies, not to mention the abundance of traps. Again, after a few attempts, we overcome this challenge and rush on to the next one, which is just an even harder evasiveness check with more enemies. After pulling off some more slick moves, we somehow get to the end of this stretch and cruise through the following 2. We're now nearing the end of the level. We pass a few barbers and find a single Krabby blocking the path. Guess I'll get on top of this platform and wait for it to walk past me.
Snake, are you okay? Snake? Snake!
Alright, after being a victim of some Dark Souls 2 tier enemy placement, we get past the Krabby and squeeze between the 2 barbers, only to be faced with yet another bullshit section. What we have to do here is hit 4 bombs to destroy all the blocks in our way. Now that would be easy, if it wasn't for the fact that between each pillar of blocks lies an enemy, and with well 2 of these being blippers, we have to lure them out in a really tiny space, as there's a massive barber just waiting to swallow us whole. Needless to say, this took more than 1 try. Still, eventually, with precision, and I mean a lot of precision, we squeeze our way through these critters. After dodging some more barbers, we finally get to the end of this level. One last foe awaits us, the boss of Onion Ocean, Fatty Puffer. Great name for a boss, by the way. Now, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that, unlike in normal stages, during boss battles, any and every attack will damage Kirby, even through block. Which makes this boss battle ever so slightly harder than the last two, because there's one specific attack in his moveset that can and will catch us off guard if not positioned properly. Just like the World 2 boss, he throws, or in this case spits, enemies at us. Since neither blocking nor absorbing them is a viable option, the only way to avoid this attack is to preemptively fly up to the top of the screen, paying attention to move away right after, as in both the first and second phase, he will follow up that attack by leaping towards Kirby, trying to catch us in the air. Avoiding this move in phase 1 is manageable, since Fatty's hitbox is smaller and gives more room to maneuver after dodging the fish. But in his enlarged form, it becomes almost impossible. Thankfully, he only uses that move pretty late in the fight, which means if we land all our star shots, there's a good chance he won't even have the time to hit us with it. And that's actually how the winning attempt played out too. With Fatty Puffer defeated, we earn the ship's left wing, return it to Magolor, and head straight into World 4. White Wafers. Finally, we get to take a breather, as, oddly enough, we're now entering the easiest part of the entire challenge run, that being the entirety of both World 4 and 5, meaning I'll limit myself to narrating the few hardships we'll encounter throughout these two worlds. Stage 1 was, to put it simply, annoying. Not too deep into the level, we come across this tower of boars scurrying around at random. I called it a tower, but really it's just a set of 3 platforms stacked vertically with increasingly more boars. 1 on the first, 2 on the second, and a whopping 4 on the last one. You can probably tell that getting through these boars is not going to be an easy task, but up to this point I've always come up with some brilliant strategy to overcome these obstacles. So you might be wondering,
What will you do this time, Noodle?
gambling. Yup, you heard it right. There is no strategy. We gamble. After testing for a while, it turns out every single boar spawns and start running in a random direction. Each one either runs left or runs right. That means we have to keep rerolling the boars until we get a pattern that lets us fly straight through without getting hit. For anyone interested, the total number of possible patterns is 128. Not astronomical, but high enough. Especially since probably not even 1/10 of these are actually viable. Despite what I said at the beginning of World 4, Stage 1 is actually an important milestone in this challenge, since we'll be introduced to what I like to call necessary sacrifices. As the name implies, these are enemies whose death, even after rigorous testing, has been proven by none other than me to be impossible to avoid. Here we reach this cannon section, where we claim our very first victims. 4 of these floating eye fish thingies, whose name by the way I couldn't find in the wiki, so if you know please let me know down in the comments. Right after that, we have to use yet another autocannon, claiming the life of a snowman, and with one final autocannon we take out a Scarfy. Using the directional cannon, we also end up killing a second one. We're then shot through several Tatangas, but we don't kill any of them. And finally, we have no choice but to kill 6 more innocent snowmen. We go through the door and... Wait, you see that? I guess we can avoid killing those poor innocent snowmen after all. Wait, back? Well, anyway, this time we take this half-eaten cannon and fly our way to the lower path. Here, we float over the broom header, get past the Waddle Dees, slide below the bouncies, and eventually run into a mini-boss who we absolutely demolish. And just like that, Stage 1 is done. Stage 2 did see me struggle to get past some bouncies. But nothing else was noteworthy and we easily clear the level. Stage 3 takes place partially underwater, and to no one's surprise, we get caught once by a gang of blippers. They must have migrated here all the way from Onion Ocean just to annoy us. Nothing else stands out, and we clear the stage 2. Stage 4 and 5 are utterly eventless, both making for unremarkable, easy stage clears. In stage 6, the next mighty foe awaits us, Goriath. Although he manages to Goomba stomp us once, he's probably the easiest boss to deal with out of the ones we've faced so far. He doesn't throw enemies at us, meaning I'm free to spit everything back at him, no holds barred. He does go Super Saiyan, but even after his transformation, we dodge his Kamehameha and defeat him. We retrieve the ship's emblem, bring it back to Magolor, and we're off to World 5, Nutty Noon. Stage 1 has nothing to offer, a swift, clean clear. Stage 2 is different. Aside from this ninja absolutely sniping us out of the air, the level features a very interesting switch gauntlet. We first arrive in a room with 2 switches. One opens the path forward, and the other one unleashes enemies. This one is relatively safe, since even if we pick wrong, we have time to hit the other switch and climb the ladder. In the second room, however, things get nastier. A ninja lurks here, forcing us to time every movement carefully. Otherwise, he easily snipes us. Here, picking the wrong switch equals a death sentence in most cases, since by the time we get to the correct switch, either the ninja or the Mumbies will have hit us. The third room is the cruelest. Picking the wrong switch here is guaranteed death. Both the Scarfies and the Shelled are way too fast and actively track us, making it basically impossible to get to the right switch in time before getting hit. Later in the level, we come across a cannon section, and as you've already seen up to this point, cannons usually mean casualties. This case is no exception. The first autocannon kills 2 Shells. The next one kills 2 more and injures a third. The last one claims the lives of 2 Scarfies and another Shelled. Yes, if you look closely, the last one did in fact survive, and just like that, stage 2 is cleared. Stage 3 is simple but costly. We're forced to claim 8 more innocent lives before clearing it. Stage 4 gives us a short but intense puzzle. We come across 4 Shells, 2 of which are harmless though, since the iron blocks lock them away. The other 2, however, pose a problem. There's close to no space to go through, and it's also filled with regular blocks to slow us down. How do we solve this? First, we need to clear a path, the one we'll use to get to the other side as quickly as possible. To do that safely, we can hug the wall and absorb 3 blocks before the shell jumps into the gap. With that opening, we quickly absorb his helmet, making it harmless. Since the shell now jumped back down, we're free to use our Hyper Sucker to get rid of 2 more blocks, leaving only 1 at the end of the passage, which we can take care of as we cross it. Now, we have to remove the only block that's in our path safely. To do that, we get rid of the 2 blocks in the middle of this 4-block bridge, stand on the leftmost one, and absorb the only obstacle left. We then jump into the gap and only have about a second to precisely fly over the harmless shell and use our air cannon to break the remaining block, before the shell behind catches up to us. Finally, we avoid the following 2 shells that come after us by flying over them and landing with exact timing. We go through the door, climb the ladder, and soar over Knuckle Joe. That's it for stage 4. Stage 5 is just a mini boss rush. We clear it easily. At last, the gatekeeper of the second planet awaits us. Our final challenge on planet Popstar, the Grand Doomer. This Phoenix is by far and away the trickiest boss out of all the ones we've faced so far. And the reason lies in the third phase. As you can see, his normal health bar is replaced by a yellow one split in 4 chunks. Each of them requires a hit from a super ability. The boss periodically spawns 3 random enemies on screen while teleporting around both on stage and in the background. We need to wait for it to spawn a super enemy, another necessary sacrifice, which will grant us the power to damage the big orange chicken. The challenge is twofold. First, we must avoid damage while ground enemies roam unchecked, forcing us to run instead of fight. Second, we must inhale the super enemy without accidentally swallowing anyone else. And as you can probably imagine, precision eating isn't really Kirby's specialty, but it doesn't end here. Even after tapping into our ultimate power, we have to immediately retreat to our corner of shame, waiting for a chance to strike, as we still can't do anything about the enemies on the ground just roaming around. Striking is also a matter of precision, as being too close to normal enemies while attacking the boss might end up with them being caught in the attack, thus invalidating our attempt. For example here, if I were to miss the Phoenix, the knight below it would have died to my attack. After about 10 minutes of spamming A in the corner, we finally get the last 2 hits and the final blow on the now unguarded Doomer. We claim the ship's mast and report back to Magolor. With Planet Popster complete, we set course for the second planet, Halkandra, Magolor's homeworld and where the real challenge truly begins. From here on out, there won't be a single easy level. World 6 is full of hard hitters, and Stage 1 is no exception. The first real obstacle is yet another cannon section, and as you might imagine, we'll sadly end up with more necessary sacrifices. Still, we can avoid killing a few enemies here and there by taking the proper steps. The first thing we see is this autocannon, which we actually need to avoid. If we don't, this happens. So, by flying below the cannon and all the way to the right, we reach this press we need to get through without the cannon. This one's fairly easy, as it opens and closes slowly. Next, we fly under the bowbies, take the cannons, and sadly end up claiming 4 more lives. Now, it gets a bit trickier. We have to time the cannon so that Kirby bounces off the press when it's fully closed, letting us get through it on our own. This press is much faster, and if either the shot or the jump is mistimed, there's a good chance we'll end up leaking the new Kirby Pancake copy ability. We make it through, take a few more cannons, and move on to the next challenging section. We're faced with a really tight corridor filled with all kinds of enemies. 2 Halkandra Ds, 2 Shells, 2 Armored Halkandra Ds, and 2 Fluids. To understand how we'll get past this corridor, it's important to explain how this game handles enemy spawns and despawns. First off, every enemy in this game has a predetermined spawn point. As soon as the camera is in range of said spawn point, the enemies spawn and start moving along their pattern. Enemies don't have a set limit on how far they can stray from their spawn point. That is, as long as they're visible. But, as soon as they take about 2 to 3 steps off camera, they despawn and won't respawn unless their spawn point is off camera again and further than 2 to 3 steps outside of its reach. Every enemy I mentioned at the beginning either moves left or right, except for Fluids, who always jump in a random direction. All the enemies that move constantly towards either direction change it upon contact with another enemy. With that said, let's break down what actually happens here. First off, if you look closely, the Halkandra D on the left actually tries to go right, but bumps into his friend, who is still in his falling animation, thus being unaffected by the direction change, resulting in both of them going left and despawning. The same goes for the shell that comes at us, while the other gets stuck between the armored Ds. All we have to do now is wait for these guys to bump into each other until there's enough space for us to get to the furthest platform. Once we're there, we patiently wait until we can confirm that the armored D has despawned by listening to the sound cues. We're then free to trigger the Fluids, which takes a bit of effort and patience, but eventually we get both of them on the ground, except that by doing so, we stray too far left, giving the Armored D a chance to respawn. At this point, you might wonder why not just slide below the fluids, and well, we can't. The slight hitbox is too big, there just isn't space. So instead, we break the armor and fly back to the platform. As we do so, one fluid despawns because we're far enough, and the other gets pushed far enough by the Ds for us to be finally free to proceed. Simple enough, right? Took only a PhD in enemy AI. From there, the rest of the stage is surprisingly calm. We cruise past the final obstacles and clear stage 1. Next up is stage 2. We get into the level, quickly get to the first door, and... holy fuck! Alright, so I know this looks hard. And I mean, it is hard. But it's not impossible either. So, let's break this down. First, we can see that these wheels hug the wall as they move. Meaning, we want to break the stone blocks above us to lengthen their trip around the room as much as possible. See that 4-block bridge on the right? That's our lifeline. What makes this room actually clearable without taking damage or killing anyone. To get there, we break the 2 stone blocks that separate us as the wheels align with the floor and fly over them. We then only have a few seconds to break the blocks on the sides, leaving one centered floating block, giving us a wheel-free safe zone and time to think about our next move. All we have to do now is wait for the right timing. Break the last 2 blocks and slide to safety. Room cleared. Next up is a fairly tricky section. We have short corridors with stalagmites falling from the ceiling and a floating platform that shields us. The second room needs to be approached carefully, as there's an umbrella-equipped third D that appears from the right edge of the screen, which, if left unchecked, will catch us in the air. Thus, we strike preemptively. We get below cover and destroy his umbrella. Then, we block, pushing both the D in front and the one behind as far as possible. That buys us time to slip back under the platform and fly over the rightmost D. The third room is easy enough. All we need to do is use our jet cannon to make a path. We then have to make 3 trips to get past this armored D. And the last room is just a freebie. Nothing else really stands out in this level, so stage clear. Stages 3 through 5 are pretty hard levels, especially compared to what we faced on Planet Popstar, but didn't really feature any standout roadblocks, so enjoy a quick compilation of my fails. Boss time, guys. This time, standing in our way is Metal General. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, guy's a pushover. Except for the fact that he spawns drones which we can't reuse to damage him, there's really nothing to say about this guy. We make quick work of him, and make our way to the final world of the game. Dangerous Dinner. Stage 1. Yeah, see, I didn't think the name of this world was meant to be taken literally. How naive I was. What they meant is that I would be these guys' dinner. Not 10, not 20, not 30, but 40 times I've screwed up on this stage. And it's all because of these despicable creatures. Clearing this stage is not a test of skill, it's a test of faith. Faith in my ability to avoid snapping my controller in 2 out of the sheer hatred I felt towards the Bronto birds in this level. At one point, I was so locked in that my fingers seemed to move on their own, blessing me with godlike foresight no mere mortal version of me could have dreamed before of this stage. So, how do we beat this level? Let's break it down. We reach the first Bronto. what we are supposed to do is slide under the pile of blocks to trap the foul beast in the gap. But since by this point I'm already tapped into autonomous ultra instinct, I just wing it and keep running. We come across another Bronto, and again, here we're supposed to bait it into going into the lava and dying. But I choose to explore the limits of my newfound power. Left, right, left, right. We gracefully dodged a flurry of attacks and reach the next Bronto, which we easily bait into taking a swim in lava. We now come across two more Brontos. One is visible, and the other is further up the hill. This time, we have to lock both of them in between the blocks, or they'll just come back to bite us in the ass. We absorb the block in the middle, shoot the bottom one, wait for the Bronto to get in the gap, bait the other one out, get this guy stuck too, and get the hell out of here as fast as possible. Soon after, another Bronto. Face full of lava, no problem. We fly over the Totanga and we find yet another Bronto, but this time, we can't secure the kill. Trying to bait it into going into the lava, I track too far back and end up letting the guy we had easily brushed off respawn. But I'm far too deep into the level to let them hit me, and dodge all the attacks until they end up touching the lava. This guy also respawns, but thankfully, he immediately crashes into the lava pillar, giving us room to breathe. Next is a side-scroller section, which we handle easily. Right after that, a brutal mini-boss battle awaits us. A water Galbaros on its own isn't a big deal, but when paired with a cannon, it becomes a real pain in the back. Since we can't block against mini-bosses, standing still is pretty much a death sentence. The only way around this fight is to try and stay in the cannon's blind spots for as long as possible, while also paying attention not to get caught by the big guy. After the hard-fought battle, we march onwards to the next section. Here, after barely dodging the barber, a Bronto bird looks down on us, waiting to strike. The plan is simple. Dodge, trap, escape. Perfect execution. We dodge the other barber and get another close call with the tornado being this close to putting a stop to this attempt. We land on the platform, and on the other side, I leave that guy in the dust and trap his friend. We're finally at the last stretch. A whole family of bouncies stares us down, but we don't falter. Slowly but surely, we slide below all of them, and after absolutely not touching the fire block, a heated duel against Sir Kibble begins. We triumph against him, fly our way up, break the two armor Ds, soar over the volcano, and it is finally over. I never want to see a Bronto bird again, ever. After a long meditation session, having regained my inner peace, I set out to beat stage 2. Let's see what this stage has in store for us. Oh, for fuck's... Alright, as you can see, we have more Bronto parts coming our way, and avoiding them will be just as tricky as in the last stage, if not harder. This level features what I like to call the Hellevator. As the name implies, as soon as I press the switch, the platform I'm standing on will start to descend, and with it the ceiling, which I can't even hug because it's made of lava, meaning I'll have a considerably limited space to avoid getting fucked over by the waves of enemies that come our way. After an extensive testing session, I finally come up with a winning formula. Stay with me, alright? First and foremost, I hug the wall to bait the first Bronto towards me and kite it into the ceiling. One down, countless more to go. Next, we wait for both the bee and the Bronto to drift as close as possible before sliding away, making them line up. I then lure both of them into the ceiling, where they should have died, but I mess it up, meaning I have to freestyle just like in last stage. I try to take advantage of the rotating fire bar, but somehow this pesky bug still finds a way to barely dodge what would have been certain doom. So this time, I choose to block and knock it into the flames once and for all. As more Brontos emerge from the depths of the elevator, we take advantage of the rolling boulders to easily get rid of them. And before the last survivor of this onslaught can reach us, we go through the door and onwards to the next section. The rest of the level is relatively easy, except for one specific segment. Here, we can see a platform we have to go through, sealed off by 2 rows of blocks with an armor D on top of it. Usually, we just absorb the blocks and move on, but the big guy won't let us do that so easily. At first, I thought I could break the armor and have at least 2 of the 3 Ds fall into the gap in the middle, giving me the time and space necessary to forge my path. But things just don't go to plan. I can't find a way to get 2 of them to fall into the hole. As I'm hitting the armor D with the air cannon though, I notice something. As you can see, when it reaches the edge, it returns to its original position and vice versa. If I tag it with a shot, it keeps sliding in the same direction for a moment because of hit stun. That's the key. I wait until it is as close to the edge as possible, fire once, make it slip, and then we have all the time we need to carve our path and get through. There's not much worth discussing left. We reach the end of the level and we're off to the last stage of the game. Stage 3 is another instance of a challenging level that doesn't actually feature any particularly mind-boggling sections. It did take me a lot of tries. And if there's anything worth talking about, it's probably this elevator section. What's with this game and elevators, really? Here's how it works. The moment the switch is pressed, the platform starts rising and only stops at clusters of self-destructing blocks that drop enemies onto us. The intended solution is to use the umbrella gadget to shield our head, but that is a no-go, since it kills enemies instantly. We can't rely on the block either, because by the time the platform reaches the second chunk of blocks, it will be flooded with enemies, meaning we'll end up inadvertently killing someone every single time, and floating over the enemies isn't an option since the platform rises too fast, keeping us stuck to the floor. Does this mean this section is quite literally impossible to clear with our restrictions? The answer is yes. But that is only if we were to be standing on the ground by the time the platform starts to rise. The trick is to be airborne before the ascent. If we fly up to each roadblock first, the platform never catches us. We can freely cross each cluster from the air, make it to the door to the next section, and then to the end of the level. It's time to face the game's final boss, the mighty 4-headed dragon, Landia. He's a tough cookie to crack. Or maybe I should say they are, since it turns out they're 4 baby dragons that fuse together. Either way, I actually have more fails against Landia than any other boss combined up to this point. Realistically, it's mainly a skill issue on my part, since I struggle dodging the attack where they come at you from both sides. Eventually though, I do beat the little lads. As we beat the final boss, we can see our heroes celebrating the end of their journey. Or is it? Turns out Magolor was the big baddie the entire time, and he had planned to steal Landia's crown all along. He then disappears into an hyperdimensional tunnel, and with the help of the baby dragons, we chase after him. I guess this is what we could call World 8. The game now transitions to a side-scrolling bullet hell, and as you can probably tell, clearing it without a single kill while also avoiding damage is far from easy. Specifically, 2 tunnels are packed with shooters. The first can be cleared by getting used to projectile speed. It's tight, but there is enough time to react to almost everything. It does take a few attempts though. The second tunnel is insane. If stage 7-1 allowed me to tap into Ultra Instinct, this is where I truly master it. Speed, precision, timing, foresight. If any of those are lacking while attempting to weave our way out of this one, we're sure to fail. I fall countless times, but I keep getting back up, and I feel myself getting stronger each time, until eventually. So, how do we do it? Let's break it down. First, we wait for the 2 tiny doomers in front to shoot. Each time they fire, they enter a 135 frame cooldown, roughly 2.7 seconds. While they're cooling down, we thread the gap between them by aligning Kirby perfectly. Holding the directional input for even half a second too long is enough to lose us the attempt. Next, we immediately hug the ceiling long enough to bait the enemy behind us into firing, so that his shot won't be an obstacle as we transition to the bottom lane. The moment we see it coming, we dive diagonally into the last stretch, making sure the first input is vertical, not horizontal, or we bump into this guy's projectile. At this point, all we have to do is ensure we're already past the little guy at the bottom by the time he shoots. Stay centered until we're past the other bottom shooter, and finally get out as fast as possible to avoid the projectiles coming from behind. We breeze through the rest of the stage until the final segment, where we must press several switches back to back, each guarded by a pink doomer. Sadly, there is no way to pass the first one without killing it, so we add a necessary sacrifice. At the very end, we also have to defeat all 3 red doomers. We are off to fight Magolor and his ship. There is not much to say here. This is the one time in the entire challenge where we are essentially at full power, so they get steamrolled in a matter of seconds. Magolor manages to knock Kirby and friends onto what seems to be a desolate planet, which will be the stage where the real final fight takes place. This fight isn't easy at all. Magolor is a very tough opponent. If we're not positioned well, he sometimes manages to either teleport or spawn his attacks right on top of us with no real counterplay. Much like many other bosses up to this point though, we can get past him by getting used to his moveset. What makes this fight really hard is phase 3. If you remember the Grand Doomer, it plays similarly. Magolor's normal health bar is replaced by 5 purple chunks, and each chunk requires a hit from a super ability. What makes it harder though, is that we won't be only getting the Ultra Sword ability, but also the Monster Flame and the Flare Beam. The last one is much harder to hit Magolor with, because unlike the other 2, it doesn't freeze time when attacking, which makes catching the final boss quite the hurdle. Unlike the battle against the Phoenix, we also have to fend for ourselves while camping the corner, since Magolor won't politely wait for us to hit him with all of our arsenal. After a lot of rinse and repeat, and by sacrificing 3 more innocent enemies, we get all the hits necessary with their respective abilities and end the fight with one final slash. Alright dude, this is getting old. Turns out the big guy has yet another phase, and with it also comes a banger OST, so you won't find me complaining. As anticlimactic as it might sound, this phase isn't as hard as the first one. It did take me some tries, but the only real obstacle is the fact that he throws enemies at us, which obviously we can't spit back at him. After a really long-winded battle, Magolor's crown finally shatters as we get the final blow, and with that, our challenge comes to an end. It is safe to say that it is not possible to beat the game without taking any damage and without killing a single enemy. Although we did keep the sacrifices down to a minimum, making the final kill count look something like this.
That was cool!
Welcome to the end of the video. This took way longer than I expected to make. This channel is a passion project by me and my friend who edited the video. It is the first full script I have written and the first full video he has edited, so if you have tips on how we can improve, please share them in the comments. We know we still have a long way to go. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. I'll see you soon in the next video.